might go forward, that elections have consequences, and that you pointed out that you had won. I wonder what consequences you think this election should have then in terms of your policies. Are there areas that you're willing, can you name today, areas that you would be willing to compromise on that you might not have been willing to compromise on in the past?
Well, I think I've been willing to compromise in the past, and I'm going to be willing to compromise going forward on a whole range of issues. Let me give you an example, the issue of energy that I just mentioned. I think there were a lot of Republicans that ran against the energy bill that passed in the House last year. And so it's doubtful that you could get the votes to pass that through the House this year, or next year, or the year after. But that doesn't mean there isn't agreement that we should have a better energy policy. And so let's find those areas where we can agree. We've got, I think, broad agreement that we've got terrific natural gas resources in this country. Are we doing everything we can to develop those? There's a lot of agreement around the need to make sure that electric cars are developed here in the United States, that we don't fall behind other countries. Are there things that we can do to encourage that? And there's already been bipartisan interest on those issues. There's been discussion about how we can restart our nuclear industry as a means of reducing our dependence on foreign oil and reducing greenhouse gases. Is that an area where we can move forward? We were able, over the last 2 years, to increase, for the first time in 30 years, fuel efficiency standards on cars and trucks. We didn't even need legislation. We just needed the cooperation of automakers and auto workers and investors and other shareholders. And that's going to move us forward in a serious way. So, I think when it comes to something like energy, what we're probably going to have to do is say, here are some areas where there's just too much disagreement between Democrats and Republicans. We can't get this done right now. But let's not wait. Let's go ahead and start making some progress on the things that we do agree on. And we can continue to have a strong and healthy debate about those areas where we don't.
Is there any to America that you think you can support?
I'm sure there are going to be areas, particularly around, for example, reforming how Washington works, that I'll be interested in. I think the American people want to see more transparency, more openness. As I said, in the midst of economic crisis, I think one of the things I take responsibility for is not having pushed harder on some of those issues. And I think if you take Republicans and Democrats at their word, this is an area that they want to deliver on for the American people. I want to be supportive of that effort. Jake Tapper.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a policy question and a personal one. The policy question is, you talked about how the immediate goal is the Bush tax cuts and making sure that they don't expire for those who earn under $200,000, $250,000. Right. Republicans disagree with that strongly. They want all of the Bush tax cuts extended. Are you willing to compromise on that? Are you willing to negotiate at all, for instance, allow them to expire for everyone over $1 million? Where are you willing to budge on that? And the second one is, President Bush, when he went through a similar thing, came out and he said this was a thumping. And you talked about how it was humbling, or you alluded to it perhaps being humbling. And I'm wondering, when you call your friends, like Congressman Perriello or Governor Strickland, and you see 19 state legislatures go to the other side, governorships in swing states, the Democratic Party set back, what does it feel like?
Feels bad. The toughest thing over the last couple of days is seeing really terrific public servants not have the opportunity to serve anymore, at least in the short term. And you mentioned there are just some terrific members of Congress who took really tough votes because they thought it was the right thing, even though they knew this could cause them political problems. And even though a lot of them came from really tough swing districts or majority Republican districts. And the amount of courage that they showed and conviction that they showed is something that I admire so much, I can't overstate it. And so there is not only sadness about seeing them go, but there's also a lot of questioning on my part in terms of could I have done something differently or done something more so that those folks would still be here. It's hard, and I take responsibility for it in a lot of ways. I will tell you that they've been incredibly gracious when I have conversations with them. And what they've told me is, you know, we don't have regrets because I feel like we were doing the right thing. You know, they may be just saying that to make me feel better, which again is a sign of their character and their class. And I hope a lot of them continue to pursue public service because I think they're terrific public servants. With respect to the tax cut issue, my goal is to make sure that we don't have a huge spike in taxes for middle-class families. Not only would that be a terrible burden on families who are already going through tough times, it would be bad for our economy. It is very important that we're not taking a whole bunch of money out of the system from people who are most likely to spend that money on, you know, goods, services, groceries, buying a new winter coat for the kids. That's also why I think unemployment insurance is important. Not only is it the right thing to do for folks who are still looking for work and struggling in this really tough economy, but it's the right thing to do for the economy as a whole. So my goal is to sit down with Speaker-elect Boehner and Mitch McConnell, Harry and Nancy sometime in the next few weeks and see where we can move forward in a way that, first of all, does no harm, that extends those tax cuts that are very important for middle-class families, also extends those provisions that are important to encourage businesses to invest and provide businesses some certainty over the next year or two. And how that negotiation works itself out, I think it's too early to say. But you know, this is going to be one of my top priorities, and my hope is that given we all have an interest in growing the economy and encouraging job growth, that we're not going to play brinksmanship, but instead we're going to act responsibly.
Negotiate.
Absolutely. Laura Meckler.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said earlier that it was clear that the Congress was rejecting the idea of a cap-and-trade program and that you wouldn't be able to move forward with that. Looking ahead, do you feel the same way about EPA regulating carbon emissions? Would you be open to them doing essentially the same thing through an administrative action, or is that off the table as well? And secondly, just to follow up on what you said about changing the way Washington works, do you think that you said you didn't do enough to change the way things were handled in this city? In order to get your health care bill passed, you needed to make some of those deals. Yeah. Do you wish, in retrospect, you had not made those deals, and even if it meant the collapse of the program?
I think that making sure that families had security and that we're on a trajectory to lower health care costs was absolutely critical for this country. But you are absolutely right that when you are navigating through a House and a Senate in this kind of pretty partisan environment, that it's an ugly mess when it comes to process. You know, I think that is something that really affected how people viewed the outcome. That is something that I regret, that we couldn't have made the process more healthier than it ended up being. But I think the outcome was a good one. With respect to the EPA, you know, I think the smartest thing for us to do is to see if we can get Democrats and Republicans in a room who are serious about energy independence and are serious about keeping our air clean and our water clean and dealing with the issue of greenhouse gases, and seeing are there ways that we can make progress in the short term and invest in technologies in the long term that start giving us the tools to reduce greenhouse gases and solve this problem. The EPA is under a court order that says greenhouse gases are a pollutant that fall under their jurisdiction. And I think you know, one of the things that's very important for me is not to have us ignore the science, but rather to find ways that we can solve these problems that don't hurt the economy, that encourage the development of clean energy in this country, that in fact may give us opportunities to create entire new industries and create jobs that put us in a competitive posture around the world. So I think it's too early to say whether or not we can make some progress on that front. I think we can. Cap and trade was just one way of skinning the cat. It was not the only way. It was a means, not an end. And I'm going to be looking for other means to address this problem. And I think EPA wants help from the legislature on this. I don't think that you know, the desire is to somehow be protective of their powers here. I think what they want to do is make sure that the issue is being dealt with. Okay. Ed Henry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to do a personal and policy one as well. On personal, you had a lot of fun on the campaign trail by saying that the Republicans were drinking a Slurpee and sitting on the sidelines while you were trying to pull the car out of the ditch. But the point of the story was that you said if you want to go forward, you put the car in D. If you want to go backwards, you put it in R. Now that there are at least 60 House districts that seem to have rejected that message, is it possible that there are a majority of Americans who think your policies are taking us in reverse? And what specific changes will you make to your approach to try to fix that and better connect with the American people? And just on a policy front, don't ask, don't tell is something that you promised to end. And when you had 60 votes and 59 votes in the Senate, it's a tough issue. You haven't been able to do it. But do you now have to tell your liberal base that with maybe 52 or 53 votes in the Senate, you're just not going to be able to get it done in the next 2 years?
Well, let me take the second issue first. I've been a strong believer in the notion that if somebody is willing to serve in our military, in uniform, putting their lives on the line for our security, that they should not be prevented from doing so because of their sexual orientation. And since there's been a lot of discussion about polls over the last 48 hours, I think it's worth noting that the overwhelming majority of Americans feel the same way. It's the right thing to do. Now, as Commander-in-Chief, I've said that making this change needs to be done in an orderly fashion. I've worked with the Pentagon, worked with Secretary Gates, worked with Admiral Mullen to make sure that we are looking at this in a systematic way that maintains good order and discipline, but that we need to change this policy. There's going to be a review that comes out at the beginning of the month that will have surveyed attitudes and opinions within the armed forces. I will expect that Secretary of Defense Gates and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mullen, will have something to say about that review. I will look at it very carefully. But that will give us time to act in potentially during the lame duck session to change this policy. Keep in mind, we've got a bunch of court cases that are out there as well. And something that would be very disruptive to good order and discipline and unit cohesion is if we've got this issue bouncing around in the courts, as it already has over the last several weeks, where the Pentagon and the chain of command doesn't know at any given time what rules they're working under. We need to provide certainty, and it's time for us to move this policy forward, and this should not be a partisan issue. This is an issue, as I said, where you've got a sizable portion of the American people squarely behind the notion that folks who are willing to serve on our behalf should be treated fairly and equally. Now,